Hello and welcome back to Shelf Centered. This is Bryce, and I'm bringing to you, finally, it's been a while, I know, a review. Magically, hey, I still can do reviews. I just thought I'd finally do one. This is one that comes highly recommended from Moyd at the Media Death Cult. He's a big science fiction channel. You're going to know him before you're going to know my channel. But anyway, I just thought I needed to read one of his all-time favorite books, and that is Roadside Picnic. And I am very glad that I did, and I can say already, if you want a quick review right now, it's highly recommended. You should definitely read it, and I will get into why. And I have to say, this is going to be a non-spoiler, but then I'll tell you when I'm going to get into the spoiler parts of the review and then back out. So I'll let you know those with timestamps right here. So Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that completely. This is an interesting concept. This book was published in 1972. You can imagine there were some things happening in Russia, and it's amazing even that this book even got published, but it's really impressive. So I highly recommend look it up, do some research on it. I won't go into that right now. This is a book review on the actual substance of the book, but it is really fascinating just to see this actually get published, despite the political environs that were in place at the time. And so, but this is an interesting concept, and it essentially, and maybe a very Russian concept, because that's what I'm learning too, the more Russian authors that I read. But this is, some aliens, they stop by Earth, and they leave at specific points around Earth, and in almost in a set pattern that is described in here almost right away. They leave kind of just almost like junk, but what an alien would leave, who's able to make it to Earth. And so you can tell already with the implications of that being that, if an alien can make it from their world, wherever they are, to Earth, they've obviously got something there, right? Something highly advanced to be able to make that trip. And so they've kind of got these spots all over the world, and it's just hard to tell, and they've just decimated or destroyed the area, or in certain ways, or left some things the way they were, but essentially they've become these grounds that are highly sought after for scientists to study, but also for a thriving black market. But part of the problem is they almost are all these kind of mazes to get through, because they offer some interesting traps, they call them, and there's these traps that they have to get through. And so there's a certain type of black marketeer called a stalker, and that's what we kind of start the book with. We've got our main character, Red Schuhart, who he's one of these stalkers. He has a job by day as a lab assistant, and so he's kind of got some perks to be able to study, and he lives in one of these towns that got visited, to say the least, by an alien civilization or whatever. So Red Schuhart, he's a lab assistant. He's got kind of some perks to be able to get into one of the zones, right? They call him the zone. And he's kind of developed, having kind of lived in this area, he's developed some skills in making it through this zone. And there's kind of almost developed this culture and legacy of these stalkers that make their way into the zone, and they'll take out things out of the zone so that they can sell on the black market. They make a bunch of money, their people make a bunch of money, and it goes from there. But the people obviously are risking themselves the most are these stalkers actually going in there and risking life itself to get through. And it's just this really interesting concept of, we're not really investigating so much. There's some of that, but a lot of it is just kind of dealing with what's there. So one of the interesting things, like there's this empty, and so it's this kind of like empty vial kind of thing, but clearly has some like properties keeping it together, but it's empty, that they get so much money for. But also, there's a rare thing called a full empty that, it's like it's the empty itself, but has something in it kind of kept in it that you can see. There's all kinds of just little things you start finding out throughout the book that they can pull out of this. And so you start out with Red wants to make the kind of the doctor that he's working for, Kirill, he wants to make him happy. Kirill's kind of having a downer, and he says, look, I'll take you through the zone. I'll take you really into the zone where we're not really even supposed to go. And Kirill kind of knows his background, and okay, we can make this happen. And so you get right into, almost immediately into what going through the zone is, and he brings these, like, he's got this handful or pocket full of screws and nuts and stuff that he can throw the right way, and it goes this way, and he knows then, okay, the gravitational shift, he can go this way or go that way, and okay, we got to avoid that. And you have to really be able to think on your feet, because it's not always the same exact maze kind of thing. And I'm calling it a maze, but it's not really a maze. It just kind of felt like it, and with all these traps that you have to kind of avoid, and you could even have a map, but the map might not be up to date, and so it could get you kind of so far and avoid some of the things that are a little more static. Anyway, I know it's all, it doesn't need to be that confusing. It's really not for that, but it is really, really interesting to get into this. But it's mostly about just, these people dealing with it. You soon find out, there's more to this world of, and more related to the people in the towns that are visited that can kind of affect the whole world. Depending on what happens. I'm trying to be very vague in my no spoiler section here, which maybe tells me I just need to get into the spoiler section. We'll get into it right now. Spoilers, starting now. For the spoilers, the general concept is, and that's why I said I think maybe a very Russian one, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this kind of idea isn't, in a lot of science fiction, it's, people, aliens came and take us to your leader, kind of an idea. And in this, it's literally a roadside picnic, and that's why it's called that. I'll be honest, I was kind of like, why is it called Roadside Picnic? That seems like the dumbest name for this. But once it's described, it's fitting, and it's hard to call it anything else. Although the stalker just might be overplayed, or just sounds stupid or something. But apparently there's some video games called Stalker, and see, that works for a video game. I don't know about a book of science fiction. Anyway, Roadside Picnic absolutely works. It's actually absolutely fitting, because this takes that whole idea and turns it on its head. It's not, oh, the aliens came all this way to find intelligent life, and they found some arguably with us. But instead, they were on their way somewhere else. They just happened to see this place. Hey, we can do a quick stop, maybe like a little picnic, roadside picnic on their way somewhere else. And that's all they did. Didn't even notice us, didn't even care about us at all, and didn't have any real interest, in any interest in humanity. They only had interest essentially in the planet and the stop, and it was quick and done for them. And then, just like we might have a picnic, and even though some of us follow the scouting rule of keeping a place better than you found it, you might not. In a picnic, you might have left some trash, and imagine, or you forgot your walkie-talkie or your cell phone, or whatever junk that you just kind of left on accident. And imagine if some primitive species kind of found these things and were like, what does this do? Not even have a clue how to use it, but might be able to use some of it to some degree with their limited abilities. So it's a really interesting concept of this kind of like nothingness and like, hey, maybe you aren't the center of the world and the universe. I mean, I guess you are the center of the world if you're talking about the world, but you're not the center of the universe. And this is kind of a big statement in that direction of like, no, you're just part of it. And so it's just really, I just find it so fascinating. And then they go, there's lots of different mysteries, and just following Red throughout his life and how he kind of handles this, and just always kind of just still drawn to this place, to the zones, and those kind of people around that. And there even is a point where zombies start coming out of the zone who were like left there and go back to where they were living beforehand, and you can't really remove them. You have a hard time to. It's a lot of interesting things going on and very fascinating. So anyway, I'll be done with the spoilers there. So back to non-spoiler part. This is just it's an interesting book. I cannot recommend it enough. It definitely has that like Russian flair for the few, the Dostoevsky and the Solzhenitsyn, and I haven't read a ton of Russian authors, but you're going to find a lot of exclamation marks there. They jump on board that. It just seems like in all the Russian literature that I've read, but it's like they're sarcastic exclamation marks usually. I also wanted to read a couple just interesting quotes, or at least one quote. Xenology is an unnatural mixture of science fiction and formal logic. At its core is a flawed assumption that an alien race would be psychologically human. And I think that plays a lot into this, and I just think that's really interesting. This kind of an alien race would be alien. They would be very alien to us, and a lot of our science fiction is almost like, oh, we're kind of mostly the same, and this is kind of like, what if they're not? And I've always, one of the things that's always bugged me in science fiction, just shows like even in Star Trek, it's the different races are for the most part, like 90% of the time, just bipedal, 2 arms, 2 legs, and with a funky looking face or something, or like that's pretty much it, or a different color skin. And I like the idea that an alien race might be who knows what, like you can't even fathom it, what that even would be. Maybe it's gaseous, like anyway, like Rick and Morty. I like this quote too. A man who is well brought up may read anything. The only people who boggle at what is perfectly natural are those who are the worst swine and the finest experts in filth. In their utterly contemptible pseudo-morality, they ignore the contents and madly attack individual words. And again, that's just, I really like that. I think it's very telling for our day and age, where nobody can actually have a conversation. We all talk past each other and don't actually address fundamental points that people are making. So overall, I think I'm gonna have to give this a 9 out of 10. It's short and sweet. There's a great intro I would highly recommend by Ursula Le Guin. Just excellent book, and it reads pretty quickly. I mean, maybe it's the I read it in Paradise, so that helped. It was nice reading. Although I also read it in hell of waiting on a plane, so that was miserable. But anyway, just highly recommended. It's such an interesting take, and it's we're talking over 50 years old now, or about 50 years exactly, and just. It's still, I thought, was very on point and really isn't dated much at all. Obviously there's a degree of that, but for the most part it's not. Even the kind of like new science or whatever from this is not, or from the aliens, it's not really dated in that respect, and that's impressive. So anyway, highly recommended. Definitely give it a go. Moyd was right. Who would have guessed? So anyway, hopefully you like it. Let me know your thoughts if you've already read it, or if you haven't, or if you plan to read it, and let me know your thoughts once you do. Really would love to talk more about it, and I will catch you later. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.